Now, let's move on to another important rendering resource, RenderTexture. We won't spend too much time on the basic theory because the concept is relatively straightforward. In game rendering pipelines, render textures are typically generated by runtime rendering strategies. These include high-resolution rendering targets, high-precision color formats, depth buffer attachments, MSAA-enabled buffers. In practice, when these configurations are used, render texture memory consumption can increase dramatically, sometimes even exponentially. However, from a GPU performance perspective, these choices are usually driven by visual quality requirements rather than memory efficiency. So in most cases, we do not aggressively optimize render texture settings purely from a memory reduction standpoint. But there is one subtle issue that is often overlooked, and this is where things become interesting. After discussing shaders earlier, a natural question arises. Could other rendering resources have similar hidden memory behavior? Many developers assume that the render texture memory shown in Memory Profiler graphics represents the full cost of the resource. Unfortunately, that assumption is not always correct. Like shaders, render texture allocations can also include additional system-level memory usage that is not fully tracked by engine profilers. Let's look at a test case. We conducted experiments on two devices, Xiaomi Mi 10, Redmi K60. The main difference between these devices was default rendering resolution. Therefore, render texture memory showed slightly different baseline behavior. On the Mi 10 device, inside the Unity Memory Profiler, render texture allocation increased by about 620 MB. However, when we examined system-level tools, such as Android Studio graphics profiling, ADB-based diagnostics, or equivalent GPU tracing utilities, we observed something different. At the system graphics layer, total GPU memory usage increased by about 770 MB, a discrepancy of roughly 150 MB. Similar behavior was observed on the Redmi K60. Engine-level profiler reported render texture allocation increase, about 1.36 GB. But system graphics memory usage increased to approximately 1.62 GB. This reveals an important insight. There exists an additional GPU memory component that is not fully captured by engine-level statistics. In other words, engine profiling tools and system-level graphics memory tracking may not always agree. This hidden memory portion is particularly relevant for high-resolution rendering targets. So when optimizing render texture usage, it is not enough to only check profiler statistics. You should also consider GPU driver-level allocation behavior, platform graphics memory management, framebuffer residency overhead. This is especially important on mobile devices, where system-level memory fragmentation and driver implementation differences can significantly affect stability. That concludes the render texture discussion.